I think the Portland job is the only one that if you told me what might tempt Spoelstra out of here, just because I don't totally know what his links are emotionally to Portland. I don't know what his attachments are or his wife's attachments are to Miami or where they want to raise a new family and kids. But Portland has been a place that has called him as someone who went to college there. And so I don't have any specifics here beyond knowing that he speaks of Portland fondly.
His father worked for the Blazers, I believe. So he has like connections that might have even grown up around that organization. So like he has real and legitimate connections to Portland, which is why like this czar of basketball plus head coach would seemingly be appealing to him.
It's something he can't be here. He's the videographer who came up through the system, and the organization is Riley's until it's not.
But it would be his after Riley leaves, right? Like, is it worth waiting around for?
I don't know if Riley's going to ever leave because he's been here for a long time. I don't know what the pull of this. Again, I have not talked to anybody, so I'm just speaking strictly of I've heard him talk emotionally about Portland. I've never heard him talk that way about another city. And so that's the only link to it, because it's right now it's just Portland's interested. It makes sense that Portland would be interested. I would think Miami would be a hell of a lot more interested in getting disgruntled Lillard here than losing their coach to there. But I also do understand in this organization that's made up of lifers and loyalists, you either ride with Riley or you're excommunicated. Like there's not this organization is filled with people who have been here like Erik Spoelstra since he was a videographer. I would understand a young father at a different time in his life saying, you know what, I'd like to be in charge of my own thing. I'd like to make a go of it. Now, there are dangers in that, right? Fizdale learned it the hard way. There are dangers in...
Stan learned it the hard way.
Well, but he's gotten chance after chance after chance at least. Juwan Howard made a decision coming up through this pipeline to go home. Portland represents home, does it not? For Erik Spoelstra, he went to college there, and he was there briefly, correct? He tried to play basketball there.
Yes. Yeah, but what Stan went through, Stan was a coach, and then he got control of everything in Detroit, and that didn't go well, right, for Stan. So that's a different animal. I wouldn't leave Riley. Like, Riley's the guy that gets LeBron. He gets Chris Bosh. He gets Jimmy Butler. He gets you to the NBA Finals. I wouldn't leave Riley if I were him, certainly not for Portland.
But Stan has burnished his reputation to the point where the Detroit thing did not work out in a spectacular way, and he still got the Pelicans job because he's got a reputation. And I think Erik Spoelstra has now kind of become like the coach's coach. Like we talked earlier about comedian. Like I think Erik Spoelstra now is the coach's coach, where everyone says, no matter what, Erik Spoelstra is getting the most out of any team that he has. So, I mean, in some ways, he doesn't have to prove that. Somewhere else, he's got that reputation already. But in terms of getting your own thing, like the heat is always bigger than any one individual except for Pat Riley.
I'm looking at that job and saying, okay, if something is going to tempt him, that's what it would look like. You've got a star, it's a city that he likes, and you get an upgrade in your power. You become somebody he does not run this organization. He is one of a handful of voices.
But he has to know that star is going to stay there long term, right? Because there have been rumors that the star might not be happy there anymore. So you have to know that.
I don't think you have to know that, actually, because he's got 3 years either way if it's the calling from home, and what Whittingham just said is true. He's not going to ruin himself. This will be his second job, and there will be a third for Erik Spoelstra if he wishes to continue down that path and there's a failure there.
Well, what is Spo's appetite to have more power? That's the essential question.
What's the appetite to be out from under the parental organization that you've been under for 20 years because you'd like to try something new, because Riley and Harrison have been in charge for a long time and you just want to try something new? Again, I'm just throwing out hypotheticals. I will say it again. I don't know anything here, but the reason I'm bringing it up is because I'm like, oh, that's interesting. That's smart of Portland. That's what I would be doing if I were Portland. See if I could tempt him with more power, more money. Hey, do you want to get out from under all that? Do you want to be somebody who carves his own path? What's your family life story? Would you prefer, there are shootings all over Miami these days. Would you prefer Portland?
That's the temptation. I think the power factors into it, but eventually he'll have power somewhere. If
he's
he
an
wants
older
that.
father.
Going home is the temptation.
He's an older father raising a new family and having found the perspective that he's been lopsided for a long time in basketball, arriving at a level of success He can choose his own thing. He can have something that more resembles adult balance in his life if he's capable of it as a coach, because they become lopsided and becomes all about the coaching. But I don't know how much I've heard him speak of how much the perspective has changed with the kids. Would you rather raise young kids in Portland or Miami right now? Because I don't know the answer to that for him, but I would think that that would be a governing force for him, whatever that is.
I would think if you're Pat Riley, one of the ways you keep Spo is to tell him in private, I'm going to give this 3 more years. You're still a young man. You're still in your 40s, mid 40s, I think. Stick it out here. We're going to make it worth your while.
You can't bank on that, though. I mean, Riley telling you that, and then 2.5 years from now, Riley's like, "Hey,
he's
going to
be a skeleton in that throne with perfectly groomed hair.
Yeah,
he's going to stay there forever, talking the entire time about how he's thinking about his beach houses in Malibu.
Would it stun? Because Greg was just trying to guess what Spoelstra's age is. Would it stun you that he's 50 years old?
Is he?
He does not look like a 50-year-old man. That dude
No.
ages brilliantly.
I thought he was like 45, 47.
He told you during Freedom that he's never going to retire. If you were listening to him, it was like, I'm not retiring. And his wife will tell you he's been talking about this for 15 years. And
about a house he's never going to get to.
I mean, he gets there. He gets there more than he ever has. And he has ceded more power to Spoelstra than Spoelstra has ever had. But it's still working under Riley. And Riley's older now. And Spoelstra's heard all the things. Like, at this point, I'm not kidding you, Stugotz. What do you think about this? You and I looked up one day and realized, oh, wait a minute. We were sort of professional parents for the shipping container. That's Spoelstra and Riley. That's Spoelstra and the Arison family. Like, he came up he doesn't know anything else other than working in that environment from the very bottom. All the Arisons, or I shouldn't say all, both Arisons have done this. Mickey Arison got this from Ted Arison. Work every job in Carnival Cruise Lines from the very bottom of the job. Work all the jobs. He did the same thing with Nick Arison. Nick, you're going to be ball boy, and you're going to help recruit Shane Battier and everyone else, but you're going to start as ball boy, and you're going to crawl up the organization, and you're going to do all the jobs. Erik Spoelstra was a kid who knew nothing, working 20-hour days at the bottom of the ship, where no one goes, cutting video splicing. Riley raised that dude.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if at this point in his career with kids and a family, Spoelstra's like, I don't need to be raised anymore. Like, I don't need to be the son for this organization.
I want to raise someone. Right?
I'm going to go and create my own thing. I just understand why it would be tempting. And this is just coming from one side. This is just Portland interested. It's not like Spoelstra has said anything to entertain what it is that I'm talking about here.
He's also about to enter his 14th season as head coach of the Miami Heat. And you wonder, I mean, they talk about coaching cycles being 5 to 7 years. He's in some ways on borrowed time in terms of his team tuning him out. Now, it has not happened at any point. Erik Spoelstra still gets the most out of his team, but you wonder if like a coach has any self-awareness to recognize they might be getting sick of
it. They always turn the team over.
So much turnover that none of the guys are there long enough to get sick of
You don't think Udonis has him, though? It's like in the back of the room, rolling his eyes, talking about process.
I think all of them are sick. To whatever degree they're sick of Erik Spoelstra, they're also sick of Udonis Haslem. Because they've both been there.
Guy get out of here already?
Udonis has been there as long as Spoelstra has been there. What are your thoughts here, Cody, as a lifelong observer of the Miami Heat since they were formed in 1988?
I think Spoelstra has a great situation here, and I don't assume that he's antsy to try something else. I think he's got such a stature. I think he's Popovich. I think he has such a reputation, a favorable reputation in this league, that he has the respect of players, and I think he's a great coach. They need to do everything they can to keep him, would be my mindset. And I just don't assume that he's antsy for more power. I don't assume that.
Dan, does he have this job for as long as he wants this job, Erik Spoelstra? For as long as he wants it?
No. I mean,
Okay.
you have to.
I thought that's part of Heat lifer, Heat family. Riley taught me, like, I'm going to stay here as long as I want to stay here. I have job security here is what I'm asking.
I don't think there is such a thing in that sport. Like, I guess Popovich has
Right.
job security, but let him keep having a couple more losing seasons and have his politics run up against his ownership group for a long time and see if there isn't. This is what we were talking about with the Dallas Mavericks. Like, I can go into any organization and find the internal struggles that any human beings have in any workplace. Popovich is much easier to stomach with political opinions that run contrary to his ownership group when they're in the finals every year.
Right.
I don't know how many years of disappointment have to happen. I will tell you, I've told you this story, right? And it's one of many like this. Pat Riley, with a couple of bottles of wine, going to knock on the door of Erik Spoelstra during the playoffs. And what you hear from the other side is some form of get the bleep out of here. Just family dynamics. Just all the stuff that you would have with your own father because you haven't worked anywhere else. This is the only organization and culture that you have ever known professionally. And so Riley can come up with a couple of bottles of, and you're like, I don't want to deal with dad right now. Like, I just don't know how much of that is here right now, but I could see why it is that you would eventually get like tired or want something other than that, especially coming from somebody. I've told you this before when it comes to Pat Riley's advice. He told me change careers every 10 years. Everything gets stale. He's saying, go try and become a doctor for 10 years. Try to become a lawyer for 10 years. He's not saying to actually do that. It's too hard. But he's saying when he looks back on his life, he wishes that he had made those kinds of changes. I've told you before, I've tried to follow that from within this realm where every 10 years, it was newspapers first, it was radio second, the third 10 years was television with my dad, and now the fourth, the last of it will be podcasts. It's within this realm. I'm not brave enough to flip it over every time, but in order to keep life fresh, I'll ask you guys are all young fathers. You tell me how your perspective changed on how important work was or where it is that everything changed for you, because I do think that Erik Spoelstra is at a different time in his life and that being a father makes you stop being a son.
I would say, yeah, that's a good point. I don't really talk to my dad that much anymore because I got my own family to worry about. But yeah, that's absolutely true. And as far as job is concerned, like having a job, yeah, that's very important. Having a family. I would like to have a job, and
And the job security of it.
and job security, which is what we all have here because we're doing our own thing. We're independent, so that's good. But Erik Spoelstra, I just don't see him going anywhere.
I feel like you guys are homers. You don't want him. Greg Cote's every opinion is going to arrive every time at that guy's not going to leave me. This is the best place for him to be.
Well, I do think this. I think Riley embraces the father role. He doesn't want to stop being the godfather of this franchise. And I thought it was very interesting after the Heat were swept by Milwaukee in the first round that Riley came right out and said Spo may have to rethink the way he uses Bam. That was an interesting comment to me because that was Riley being more than just the general manager. That was him
That pressure's always there. That pressure is there daily.
Right.
Riley runs that organization. Don't make any mistake about it.
But here's what you don't want if you're a father, if you have a family. Like, he has job security here, Dan, right? You move to Portland 3 years, it doesn't go well. Then all of a sudden you're moving your family from place to place, and you don't want that. Like, right now he has job security here. He can stay here, I'm assuming, until at least his kids go to college.
And the Heat just made the finals last year. It's not foreseeable for at least 5 years that he would be under any job security pressure for me.
The other variable too is that's a harder job. If you want to spend time with young kids,
Yes.
responsible for the entirety of the organization is not the job that gives you balance.
Right.
It's the job that takes balance away.